Good afternoon, or good evening, I should say, everyone. I hope you are keeping well. You are very welcome to another installment of our webinar series called Discover Your Future at DCU. I am really excited about this week's episode. We are going to be covering all things chemistry in DCU, and in a moment's time I'm going to welcome on our fantastic panel that are going to help bring you through every aspect of chemistry in DCU, between modules and courses that you can do, career progression, internships, job opportunities, everything exciting like that. But just before we get started, I will draw your attention to the Q&A function that is along your Zoom screen at the bottom. As we go through the panel discussion today, if you have any questions at all for our panelists about chemistry, whether that's maybe an entry requirement into a course, how they found the student experience themselves, anything along those lines, please feel free to put your question in the Q&A box and we will make sure to cover them throughout the talk. So this is your time to ask questions. If you are a student, maybe you're in 4th, 5th, 6th year, you could be a parent, teacher, guidance counsellor. If you have any questions about chemistry, this is the place to be on a Thursday evening. So without further ado, I am going to add our panelists onto this call one by one. I'll allow them access to their camera and their microphones so that we can get started talking about chemistry in DCU. So the first panelist that I'll add is Andrew Bevan. So Andrew is a final year student in DCU and he is studying chemical and pharmaceutical sciences. So he's going to be able to give us kind of a student perspective on what it's like to study in DCU, and maybe even more about why he chose this course in DCU and how he narrowed it down. Next up, we are going to add Jennifer O'Connell to the call. So Jenny is a former student ambassador in DCU, and she has recently graduated and is now pursuing a master's in teaching. So Jenny studied, I'm going blank now. Jenny can tell us when she comes on. I'm going to let her onto the call now and it'll work. Fantastic, Jenny's on her way. Hi Jenny, how are you? Next up, we are going to add Dr. Emma Coyle onto the call. So Dr. Emma Coyle is the current chairperson of Chemical and Pharmaceutical Sciences in DCU, and she's going to be becoming the chair of our new course starting in September onwards, Chemistry with AI in DCU, which is going to be really, really interesting. So Emma, you are very welcome. I'm going to add you and promote you to a panelist. And then last but certainly not least, we are going to add Dr. Pat O'Malley to the call, who is the current chair of the Chemistry General Entry route into DCU. So Pat, you are very welcome. What I'm going to do now is make sure all of our panelists can turn their video on. Is that working for people? 1 second, I'm going to make you all a co-host. There we see Jenny, fantastic. We see Andrew. Pat, I'm on my way to make you a co-host. And we have got our panel. Fantastic. How is everyone keeping?
All good, thank you. All good.
Have you had a good Thursday so far?
Absolutely, yeah.
So far so good.
Absolutely. Hopefully it continues on as well as it's been going. We have a fantastic number of students in today who are interested, and I'm sure the number will grow as the minutes go on. So as I said, for anyone who's just entered the call, please feel free to use our Q&A function at the bottom if you do have a question relating to chemistry in DCU, and we can make sure to ask our panel. But it'll be a lovely informal chat, so there's no question that's too small. If you do want to ask these guys anything, they'd be more than happy to help. So to start off, maybe we might go to Pat first. Pat, you are currently the chair of the Chemical Sciences General Entry route into DCU, which is kind of a new system that we've set up. And would you mind talking us through the different courses maybe that DCU has on offer for someone who's interested in pursuing chemistry at 3rd level?
Okay, thanks Sinead. Indeed, welcome everybody. And we do hope that this is informative for you. As you say, Sinead, we have developed more recently our Chemical Sciences General Entry program. So Chemical Sciences General Entry is DC 163. And prior to this, parents, maybe more so career guidance teachers, may be more familiar with the predecessor as such, which was Common Entry into Science. And that was DC 201. But that's now been replaced with our School of Chemical Sciences General Entry into our chemistry degrees, if you like, DC 163. So DC 163 will be that Chemical Sciences General Entry, where the students will, when they take up our first year on that program, they will carry out chemistry, physics, biology labs, maths, a lot of exciting modules along the way there. And at the end of that year then, the students will progress into one of our 3 degree programs presently. They'll progress with that choice into either Analytical Science, which is DC 162, or beg your pardon, DC 161. They'll progress into chemical and pharmaceutical sciences, or their second degree there, DC 162 now. And they also have the opportunity to progress into our new, very exciting addition to this stream of degrees, chemistry with artificial intelligence. And presently, the route for that will be via DC 163 as well. So that's the layout at the moment. It's new but exciting in a way, in that it's, as I say, DC 163 is our general chemistry route in, with the opportunity to progress into either of those 3 degrees, as opposed to the previous common entry science. And just to add to that, Sinead, we also have, the school's very supportive and of our environmental science and technology degree, DC 166. And of course, that's very topical at the moment with climate change and everything. So that's another one that I hope will appeal to our viewers this evening.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Pat. And I know, Emma, you, as I said, you are becoming the chair now of chemistry with AI. Any insight into what that's going to be like? Very exciting developments there.
It is really, really exciting, actually. So I'm delighted to have the chance to tell people about it. Basically, what we have is a world first course with chemistry with artificial intelligence. Normally, if you want to be a chemist with skills in artificial intelligence, you would do postgraduate studies to add to that area of expertise. But we've teamed up with the School of Computing to be able to offer a chemistry degree where you can also study AI and how we apply artificial intelligence and machine learning to chemistry applications. So ideas of where it could be applied, as you may have come across it already this year in the COVID vaccine development and COVID treatment development, this way that you can use machine learning to be able to analyze a huge amount of data and then infer what are likely to be your best targets, your best opportunity. And so it's able to accelerate research in that area. Other areas that it can apply to is maybe in materials development. So you can use your machine learning, your artificial intelligence to predict materials, what they could do. So you might be able to predict this would actually be a very good plastic because it would be extremely stretchy and would have really good surface properties. And that way you could avoid having to make lots and lots of different polymers and have a targeted, these are the ones that look like the best candidates, let's take a look at them. And you can use it then in kind of the further down the line materials development or further down of what happens a chemical. You can look at the toxicology or the ecology of some chemicals. We can use the machine learning and AI to predict where they might accumulate. So we can look at environmental aspects of where will this chemical go when it reaches end of life? And that can really help. It links in to the environmental part that Pat mentioned there. So there's loads of potential for, if you want to picture a career in chemistry, you don't necessarily have to be the white coat in the lab. You can, if that's what you like. You could also be desk-based, investigating new challenges that arise. And the great thing about chemistry with AI is that we're right on the cusp of it emerging. So there's loads and loads of potential careers that didn't exist 5 years ago, and there'll be brand new careers 5 years from now. So it's a perfect time to come in and join us.
Yeah, so exciting. So you can do that through the Chemical Sciences General Entry course. So then you kind of do the same first year, and then from second year, you can kind of pick the stream that you want to go into. I think that's a very reasonable kind of system to go through, especially for students in secondary school. First off, some of them may never have done chemistry before, you know, coming into the course. So it's a fantastic way to kind of go, okay, let me think which route I want to go into. But equally, for some of our degrees, you do have a chance to go in kind of straight away if you know exactly what you want to do. So thanks so much, Emma, for covering that chemistry with AI. Definitely sounds really cool. If we revert back to some of our kind of like well-established courses that have been there for a while in the School of Chemistry, if I was a student who was thinking, right, I love chemistry, but what are the differences with these courses? Like, how do I know which one that I might be interested in? Maybe Emma and Pat, maybe you could table tennis back and forth, maybe covering some of the courses. We might start, Emma, you're currently chair of chemistry with, or chemical and pharmaceutical sciences. What's that like? And maybe we'll pop over to Andrew afterwards for a student perspective on that course.
Yeah, so chemical and pharmaceutical science, as well, I've prefaced it with, it's one of the biggest areas for the Irish industry, where 40% of exports are pharmaceutical and chemical. It's a really, really recession resilient industry to be in. And it actually kind of coincides with the biopharmaceutical as well. So if we have people here who are currently studying biology, but maybe liked the bits that were chemical related, there's loads of potential. If you come into general entry chemistry, you may find that you like the pharmaceutical aspect, or you might find that you like the bioanalytical aspect. So there's a lot for that kind of border between biology. In chemical and pharmaceutical, we kind of view it as our very chemistry intensive degree. So we have a very big emphasis on practical lab work. So across all years, lots and lots of opportunity to be in the lab doing experiments for organic chemistry, analytical, targeted towards pharmaceuticals, loads of different experiences for that. That's across all the years. And then, of course, we have our entry placement. So lots of our students then will go to pharmaceutical companies, and they will have lots of different roles within that. So they may have their lab-based in quality control. They may be lab-based in terms of development opportunities or in stability testing, things like this. They may be in formulation. Will we make a capsule? Will we make a tablet? Will we make an injectable? So that would be what we call the wet chemistry parts. They have jobs then that are the quality aspects, but they're the other side of it where you're reviewing the data, you're looking at all of the information you've received, and you're able to check and see, have all safety aspects for the pharmaceutical or for the veterinary product been approved. That would apply in the food and brewing industries as well, that the skills in quality control and review would be important everywhere. So then our graduates will tend to go on. They have a huge scope of things that they can do, work in pharmaceutical companies. They can work in the manufacturing part, in the development part, in the research part. They can work in food and brewing. They work in consulting, where they can work for science companies, provide consulting. They can become technology experts. So they might be the person that goes around selling different equipment or different portfolios of information that would be relevant. So it's a huge scope of where people can go. They can be lab-based, they can be a lot of research. We have around a quarter of graduates will proceed on to postgraduate studies. So they may go on to masters or PhDs. And when they do their masters, sometimes they'll do masters that are business oriented as well as science, just to allow that conversion and expand their skill set. So there's loads of scope of what you can do from chemical and pharmaceutical science.
Yeah, there's lots to do. And I don't know if either of you guys want to cover analytical science, or maybe Jenny might want to talk a bit about, you know, what's involved, again, from a sixth year perspective, you know, what do you kind of need to know about the course going into it?
For sure, yeah, I can jump in there, I guess. Analytical science is great in my opinion, because as Emma was saying, if you love chemistry and you're really focused on chemistry, chemical and pharmaceutical is a fantastic course. But if you're a bit undecided between biology and chemistry, analytical science is perfect, because you do a very decent mixture of the two of them right up until final year. And that was one of the selling points for me for that course, especially going into teaching as well. It gives a really good background kind of for that. But other jobs that you can go from for analytical science in particular, forensics could be one for that would consider, like your lab skills that you would gain throughout your kind of entire course. Your analytical skills be very applicable to the forensic sector. And then quite similar, you know, research working, I think pharmaceutical you can also go into with your analytical degree. So really the doors are kind of wide open with any science degree. I was lucky enough to do my intro placement in forensic science Ireland, so I was able to see the application of what I would have done in labs in college, how you can actually see it being applied in the workplace, and it's fantastic. Yeah,
that's really, really cool. So you're kind of bringing that, you know, industry experience into your school teaching, which is great, you know, to give that information to students
for
who
sure
might want to go on and do something like that. You know, you've actually been out there, you've done the stuff, and you kind of know. Andrew, we might bring you into the discussion for a second. So you are currently, you're still in DCU, you're in your final year of your course. So if you can throw your mind back to sixth year, Andrew, what was you thinking? Was it definitely chemistry? Was it definitely DCU common entry, or how did you make up your mind?
Well, actually, surprisingly, when I was in sixth year, I wasn't particularly good at chemistry. I was more of a biology man, but I always had a great interest for chemistry. And so looking at all the different courses on the CAO website, I decided I'd go with my heart and go for chemical and pharmaceutical, because it had that more chemistry base to it, while Jennifer said, the analytical has a good amount of biology and chemistry. I knew myself that I wanted to do mainly chemistry. So I went with it, and eventually my grades came up. So to anyone that's struggling with chemistry at the moment, I'd say don't worry, like you can pull your grades up, and if you really enjoy chemistry, it's definitely the course for you.
That's great, Andrew. So so you're final year now, so you would have done an intra placement, kind of like Jenny did in your third year. Did you enjoy that? Where did you go for that?
Yeah, so I was lucky enough to actually get in with one of the COVID testing labs. So unfortunately, the year I'm in, our placement coincided with COVID. So a lot of people were unfortunate enough to have their placements cancelled. But I got in with this COVID lab anyway, and we were in charge of getting the testing swabs into our lab. And we basically prepared them for analysis for a different lab, so that if the COVID gene was present, that would basically be copied multiple times so that it would be easier to see and determine if the patient had COVID or didn't. And some of my friends I know went into other sectors in the industry. Some went into quality control or making painkillers, that kind of stuff, while others went into more office-based jobs. So there's a huge range of jobs you can go into from the course.
And you mightn't necessarily have to know exactly what you want to go into once you enter the course. There's a lot of time to figure out. And often an internship is a way to establish not only what you like, but also what you dislike, you know, because you could be out in somewhere working for 6 months and you go, actually, this is quite different from what I thought it would be. I'm going to try and do something else from final year onwards. So I think that's something that really makes DCU kind of stand out amongst the rest, is those internship opportunities. And not only, as I said, can you discover what you want to do, but maybe also what you don't quite like to do. I'll just remind anyone who's just entered the call, there is a Q&A function. If you want to ask our panelists anything about chemistry, feel free. And Pat, we might come to you as the chair for Chemical Sciences General Entry. As I said, some people might be coming into DCU never having really had a huge interest in chemistry before, or maybe are struggling with it. I'm sure there are lots of supports available for those students, right, upon entry?
Yeah, that's right, Sinead. It has that great aspect to the general entry chemistry now, as well as having the opportunity to have first year as a common year when you find your feet and you really determine which of the chemistry streams appeal to you, be it Emma's recent one, chemistry artificial intelligence, be it analytical science or chemical pharmaceutical, and indeed we hope to increase the range over the coming years. But as you say, a student, regardless of the chemistry they have or just having a science subject, in our first year, we ensure that they get a very good basis in both chemistry, physics, biology, maths. And of course, we have our Maths Learning Centre on campus here that's open in the library for students to book in for support there. Within the chemistry labs, we would ensure our students have one chemistry lab each week. And it really is a known trait, I would say, of a DCU chemistry graduate, the amount of hands-on they get within the lab. And this really stands them. You can see with employers when we go and visit them at Intra, they're very impressed with the students' ability to work the instrumentation to adapt very quickly. So that's something we're very proud of, that we can get our students into the lab and ensure they have hands-on experimentation fairly much from year one. Indeed, even as Andrew mentioned there with the COVID, and all of us are aware of the manner in which that affected so much. But again, I'm glad to say we managed to get our first years in small groups safely, very much COVID aware, into the lab. So for the first semester, they were in every second, every third week, and they were either synthesizing one of the analgesics. We had them, students will know here about the Rubex tablet, where we had them grinding up Rubex and determining and telling us their percentage vitamin C in that tablet. Likewise, we have lots of exciting first year experiments like that get them hands-on. I know our group recently, just as part of the basic experiments we get them up to speed with, we have the students bringing in water samples from their own home, their own apartment, rivers nearby. And with their analysis then, we have created over the last few years, each year, our own water hardness map of Ireland. And that's from the country, wow, our first year students. So yeah, it's that they bring something in from home and they can go back and tell their parents, their family, where all this experience and how it's already manifesting even in year one. So as you say, Sinead, there's lots of nice support in year one through all the different disciplines, the modules as we call them. And the chemistry, as I say, the chemistry lab is active in that manner. They would do 3 hours a week, each week for both semesters, which gives them a great grounding for then progressing into their year two. And likewise into year 3, when you mentioned Entra there, that's again great for our undergraduates to see how well placed they are for even Andrew mentioned there, which is a great achievement to himself, that, you know, just as an undergraduate, he's already in the COVID arena and they saw his skills and had him responsible for putting the kit together. And as you say, it gives students a great sense as well of where they may like to move. I know, if I'm not going on too much, but 1 or 2 more examples.
Yeah.
I would have visited some students in 3rd year Entra. And as you say, and Emma mentioned, it's a great opportunity for students to determine, is it lab work I like? Is, as Emma says, is it the white coat? Is it office work? They would go looking at quality control. They work in the lab. One student we had was looking at in McDonald's. And I thought, okay, it's not the worst if they end up making burgers, not such a bad thing. But she was down there looking at biofuel, the potential for the fats and the oils to be used as a biofuel. Another student, they could see a lot of very good lab skills and problem skills have been developed. So she was monitoring actually water levels that had fallen in the local area. And they had assumed that nitrates and all of that were very high in the area was the cause of local farming. But it was her ability with her supervisor there that actually determined it was the rising of the water levels that raised natural levels of nitrates and phosphates. So there was nobody to blame as such. So it just, as was mentioned already, it can take you in so many different directions. Those are just a few of the intra-placements that students experience and gives them.
Actually, Pat, if I could come in there as well, just as you're speaking, it reminded me something that students may find interesting is that the entry placement and the opportunities in chemistry, they're not all localized in Dublin, because when we go on the entry placement, we're going down to Cork, we're going over to Longford and Galway and Sligo and up to Donegal. The chemical, pharmaceutical, chemistry is all over Ireland. So there's opportunities for students, even if you come to Dublin for your studies, you're not coming to Dublin forever. If you want to return and go back to Galway or go to the Midlands, there are opportunities all over the country and abroad for graduates from DCU. So there's loads of potential of where you can physically go as well as the career paths you can take.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's often a question that we get is, you know, or are there job opportunities in Ireland for this, you know, this school or this course? And I think it's an overwhelming yes, I think we would say from all the examples that we've heard, which is fantastic. And I even think that's so exciting to hear as a 6th year, like obviously when you're in school, most of your work is done in a classroom and you do some experiments maybe in a lab, but hearing that you're going to really actually go out, not even from 1st year in college and actually, you know, hands-on learning with various projects and a lot of kind of like individual led learning as well. Like, okay, here you have the information, go off and see what you can do with it. Like that's really exciting. And I think something students can definitely look forward to, you know, when they come into DCU, no matter what course they end up going into. Again, I think it's a common kind of thread throughout. Jenny and Andrew might be able to hop in here. An example of a really cool experiment that you got to do or something that you thought, oh, this is just so epic.
I'll jump in there. Yeah, in 3rd year, actually, we got to use a scanning electron microscope. So anyone that's in school at the moment, any microscopes you would use in your lab classes in school will probably be about from the desk up to about here. So they're fairly small, compact, what you need for your class. But the scanning electron microscope is significantly bigger than that, significantly more expensive as well. So that was terrifying.
No breaking it then.
Look, I mean, no, exactly, yeah. But the experience that we got, like, it was just fantastic, kind of seeing stuff on such a small scale. And then trying to consider what kind of different prep you need to do to get the best image. That kind of thing was really interesting to see. But I think the strongest selling point of all the DCU labs is the independence given to students. And that was a fairly good example of it there, just leaving the 2 students in there to work and do their work. And everyone was there to ask questions if needs be, but it was fantastic. That was probably the one that stood out for me.
That's really cool. Andrew, do you have anything to add there?
One experiment that really stuck with me was back in 2nd year, I think, and it was the first time I properly saw chemistry in action. We made a aspirin tablet from scratch, and just all the different steps, everything that goes into the tablet, from turning the powder into the actual tablet form. I just remember thinking, wow, I'm actually doing chemistry. I'm making these painkillers that people would be using in the real world. And I just thought from then on, I'm definitely in the right course. This is what I want to do.
Yeah, goodness, that sounds like, even to me, it sounds like something that you do way, way, way far up in your career, like not necessarily doing it in university. Like that is really, really cool. And we were chatting a little bit about, and Emma kind of covered it earlier, you know, the different careers that you can get. Jenny, when you came into this course, any clue what sort of job you wanted to do, and how did you kind of turn to teaching as an option for yourself?
Yeah, so I actually came in with the idea of going to teaching. That was kind of always my goal. But
Brilliant.
I do have to say that my experience throughout the course, and especially working in the lab, did sway me a bit, to be honest, to maybe go towards a lab-based job, to be honest. But I think I was always heading for teaching. That I always knew that. But the best thing about doing a science degree before going into teaching is that further down the line, I can go and work in a lab if I want to. I still have that option there for me. But yeah, for me, it was always teaching. But I was swayed a few times. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Maybe Emma and Pat, you know, you've seen a couple of students graduate, I'm sure, over the years. Any very kind of unique roles that students went into that a student listening today might go, oh my God, I didn't even think you could do that from doing a chemistry degree.
Yeah, well, I recall one, it's true, there's a great variety, is right, Sinead. And as Emma mentioned earlier, it's so hard for ourselves, and apart from the students coming on board, because it's developing all the time, and there's such an outlet to the pharmaceutical industry, and there's so many sides to it. So as you say, between the wet chemistry, synthesizing, carrying out research, quality control. I recall visiting a student down in Abbott in Longford, whereby she was initially put in the lab some synthetic work, and then they could see she had good people skills as such and some computer skills. So when I went down to visit her, they had honed in on these transferable skills, and she was shadowing one of the people down there who was working with small groups of employees in Abbott as they were coming to grips with the new computer package. Some of them were resisting it. There was a psychological aspect to it, and there was some computer skills. And they saw with this, our graduate, our third year interest student at the time, that she had the skills and the transferable skills in a way to use her chemistry, use her science, and also some computer knowledge. So she was one of the people who pursued that particular direction career, and then stayed with the company in that kind of role. So much you might think at the bench, and it can take you in so many different directions. And then, of course, one or two colleagues have gone into marketing, science communication. Sinead's another one. There's a huge number of routes from these degrees.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I think one of the first things Emma mentioned was, you know, if you want to go into kind of lab, white coat, goggles, that is an option, but there is so much more out there as well. And if you're not sure what you want to do, you can figure that out while you're in a course.
And I think actually it's good to point out, DCU, we're really, really proud of our employability of graduates. So usually 6 months out, there's a survey of graduate employability, and we're usually greater than 90% for our chemistry graduates. So there really is a lot for people to do. And of course, say we're encouraging people, the thing to do when making your choices now, if you're thinking about coming in through CAO, is really it should be something that you like, because you're going to have it for your whole career ahead of you. So there's so many different things. You probably heard lots of jargon today of different jobs you never knew existed. The important thing is to know, I like chemistry. I could picture doing chemistry. And then as you go through your studies and through your career, you'll find out all these different things you never knew existed. And you could find something completely different that you don't know now even exists, but you might love it.
Absolutely. And, you know, I mean, everything is just increasing so rapidly with technology and STEM, anything like that. You know, there could be jobs that you're working in that don't even exist right now, as Emma said. So don't be too concerned about a specific career. Follow your interests. You know, if you have an interest in chemistry, if you're inquisitive and you want to, you know, figure out how things work, any course like that in DCU would be fantastic. Again, there's a Q&A box there, guys. If anyone has a query, please do let us know. We might be covering everything that the questions or that the students might want to ask. And one thing that we do, again, another question we get in a lot is about kind of timetabling once you get in. Students want to know, okay, how much will I be sitting in a classroom? How much will I be in a lab? Are there opportunities to speak to kind of a lecturer or a tutor one-on-one? Now, granted, that might vary course to course in the School of Chemical Sciences, but would anyone have an idea roughly of a kind of structure?
Yeah, I'll jump in there if you don't mind. So say this coming year for intake, we've already flagged about the chemistry with artificial intelligence as one of the options from our general entry chemistry. So all of our students will have chemistry, physics, biology, and you'll have labs and lectures for those. So we usually have a day and a half per week is in the lab, so lots of practical time. And then we have a mixture of different lectures, different tutorials, and different ways of lecturing. And of course, we're still in what we consider COVID era, looking at this blended delivery between online and in person, or at least live online. So this is something that I'm working towards a lot. And I know for certain I'm going to be teaching chemistry to first years, as will Pat. So if you do put us down on your CAO, we'll see you in September for your lectures. So week 1, you'll have both myself and Pat. And in DCU, we're first name basis for our students. You can feel free to call me Emma, that's fine. And usually we're receptive to emails and that if you want a face-to-face contact, even if we're online, we'll do Zooms and chat, so you'll have the face-to-face contact as well. So it will be busy. College is busy, you know. You usually have say on-site activities with lectures and everything, you'd be over 20 hours definitely. So you might have friends that do an arts or humanities course where they have a lot of independent time and maybe only 8 hours contact. For sciences and for engineering, things like that, it's a lot more hours. So you'll have plenty of support regardless of if it's on campus or online, because you'll have that scheduled time where you will be engaging with us and engaging with your classmates.
That's great. Thank you so much. Yeah, hop in, Andrew.
What, Pat, do you want to go? Sorry.
No, away you go, Andrew. Thanks.
Just to add to what Emma said about, yes, the chemistry does have a lot more hours than the likes of some of the other humanities courses. But just to reassure all of you, I've been in a society, the Science Society, from 1st to 3rd year. We've gone on trips abroad, and I've also played soccer my whole way up through college. So you will have time to enjoy the college experience as well as having enough time for your actual studies. So not to worry about being bogged down with work 24/7. There is time for other activities too.
Yeah, I'm glad you touched off that, Andrew, because it is a huge part of college life as well. No matter what course you choose, and if you come to DCU, involvement in clubs and societies is really recommended and probably advised, I would even say, because, you know, it's really important to kind of get that work-life study balance all correct and make sure that you're enjoying yourself, or as Andrew said, like other passions like sports or anything that you're interested in. Jenny, much involvement in clubs and societies for yourself?
Yeah, mainly sports for myself, basketball and Gaelic football. Sorry, are you okay? Yeah. Basketball.
Fantastic. Sorry, I had a bit of a lag there.
No, you're grand. Yeah, it would have been mainly sports for myself, and that always fit in quite nicely with lectures, because training would have been later on. But yeah, there's always time to fit in extracurriculars, and that's how you're going to get the full college experience. You'll graduate with a degree, but it's kind of experience that you gain along the way that really make the whole college experience worth it. Yeah.
Absolutely. And when we ask our graduates or, you know, students on the call their favorite memories from college, more often than not, it is a random society event that they had great fun at, you know, but they also have their degree with it as well. So it's really fantastic. We have a couple of questions coming in there, guys. Don't know if you can see them on your end. Someone has asked, is it very different to leaving Cert chemistry? And I'm assuming that's kind of 3rd level. Is there a huge jump in between the two?
I might pop in there, Sinead, and just say, just even to follow on from the other questions, as you say, we ensure between our labs and our lectures that there's good support there. So it's having leaving Cert chemistry is a very good basis, of course, and we build up fairly quick from it, because then you're at university level. But we do ensure the first 4 or 5 weeks, 6 weeks even, that we are bringing all of the group with us. Many students come along, and we've often had students who don't actually have chemistry. Presently, prior to this general entry chemistry, we had common entry science, and there we had students who would have had biology, and in the first year with the broader spectrum of students, at the end of year 1, they would decide to pursue a chemical, pharmaceutical or analytical science, or now chemistry to IT route, even though they didn't have chemistry. So those with chemistry and leaving Cert chemistry, it's definitely is a great basis. But we will reiterate that. They'll find some familiarity with the labs. But again, Sinead, we try to make sure the labs aren't a repetition of what they've seen in Leaving Cert. So we build on those. And, you know, Leaving Cert students probably have heard of pressure, volume, temperature. We create some very nice experiments on that again, more open type, where we give them the 3 variables, we give them a bit of equipment, and we ask them in a group of 2 to figure out how would they compare 2 of them. And it's great to see them develop the experiment, gloves and balloons and everything, you know. So, but the jump, there's great support, and we'll move to first year university level then, obviously, by the end of the year. And that's a great basis then for years 2, 3, and 4. But the topics, they will recognize organic chemistry, they'll recognize introductory chemistry, electrons, atomic orbitals, things like that will definitely be a great basis and sound very familiar.
Yeah, thank you, Pat. And there's another question that's come in that's quite similar. And someone's asked, if you didn't study biology for the Leaving Cert, would you find it hard to catch up? And I'd say this is kind of the general rule of thumb across most universities. If it's not a requirement upon entry, you know, they're not expecting you to know any amount of it, you know, unless they're asking for it, then you don't need to worry. You know, if you didn't study chemistry or biology, but you feel like you'd have an interest in it, as long as you get in, you'll be brought, as Pat said, with the group throughout, you know, for the first couple of months, making sure that everyone is on the same level, and then you can build together from there. So I hope that's reassuring for people listening today who might want to pursue chemistry or biology, but maybe haven't, or they might not choose it for Leaving Cert or something like that. A question came in, and this can vary, I know, kind of year to year, about the points for these courses. And maybe Pat could cover initially the fact that there kind of aren't points yet for chemical sciences general entry. And students will find out soon. But if anyone knows the points off the top of their head, they can hop in, or we can, of course, send a link in for students to take a look at.
Yeah, I can answer to that. So obviously, as Sinead and Pat have pointed out, that we've now changed from common entry science to general entry chemistry. So we don't know exactly what the points will be. And then, of course, the second factor is it obviously depends on the Leaving Cert and on the systems employed. So it does have that fluctuation in CAO points year to year. However, if we base it on 2 years ago and prior to that, we would be looking around 470 to 490 in general, then maybe down to 460. So that's kind of the old reference numbers. Last year, they were that little bit higher, so perhaps they will be, but it's around 470 to 490.
That's great. Thanks, Emma. And as you said, they can fluctuate, you know, depending on supply and demand. So, but that's a nice kind of general kind of figure for people to be aiming in between. Guys, if you've any questions, do pop them in, and we'll have another couple of minutes of discussion, but please get your questions in if you do have anything. I always like to ask our panelists if they had any advice for current students. If you want to throw your back to, you know, when you were in 6th year, or even just from an academic perspective, something that you've noted, or even from your own college experience, is there a word of wisdom you could pass on to our listeners today that might help them through the next couple of months and into college?
Oh, I think what you just mentioned a few moments ago, Sinead, is that, and that person's question about do I need biology, very, very few students come into a science course with all 3 sciences. And some students come into a science course with not the named science. So they might have done physics with chemistry, or they might have done agricultural science. So they may not be coming in with all the knowledge about chemistry, physics, and biology. And that is absolutely okay. So don't worry about that. Like Sinead said, and like Pat has said, we start out with kind of concepts that we can build on over the course of the year, and then we build on those in years 2 to 4 as well. So if you're anxious, which you probably are, because it's that time of year where things are tough, but don't worry too much. It will be okay.
Thank you, Emma. That's lovely to hear. Anyone else like to hop in?
It kind of reiterates, Sinead, what Emma had said there, indeed, that don't get too concerned, don't worry about it. It can seem like a very difficult choice, and if I commit to analytical science, if I commit to chemistry, artificial intelligence, at the end of the day, they will be very similar, especially when you do first year general entry chemistry. You'll have a lovely broad spectrum there. You might be wondering, have I enough chemistry? Should I have chemistry at all? And as our student said here as well, you know, having an interest in it at a reasonable level, it's very hard for some students to say, oh, I'm really passionate about this because I'm torn between chemistry and biology, or I'm torn between. So sometimes that's why the general chemistry program would appeal to you. And our analytical science, as Jennifer says, has the two nice streams going together. As Emma says, that chemistry with artificial intelligence, likewise, it's going to have that computational side to it. So don't get too bogged down and obsessed about the commitment to it. If it's your interest and you put it down and you work towards it, then when you're in year one, it will develop for you and you'll start to really see, yeah, I might prefer the analytical. I think I prefer the artificial intelligence route. That will all start to pan out for you. And at the end of the day, ultimately, Sinead, they're going to get a good honours degree in science, in chemistry, that will be recognized by pharmaceutical companies and will have, as we spoke about, those transferable skills.
Which is very important. A common thread throughout all of these talks is the fact that the skills that you learn can be applied in various careers and internships and opportunities. So, you know, you're not coming in just to learn about chemistry and you leave and all you know is chemistry. You know, there's a huge set of skills that you have, you know, in your arsenal when you leave. Jenny, I think you were going to pop in with some advice.
Yeah, just a tip, I suppose. I came into the course not having done physics, for example. So that was a whole different thing for me, but I found that Leaving Cert Revised Wise book, or you know, I think it's Less Stress, More Success. If you get one of those for maybe the subject that you don't have, that can just help you kind of familiarize with you know, certain names and definitions that will help you in understanding maybe what's going on in those initial lectures. That was just a tip I found from first year for myself.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. Anything like that a student mightn't think of at the minute, and in hindsight you go, yeah, that was a clever idea. I'd like to share that. Andrew, anything that hasn't been mentioned already?
Just another thing, I have a friend in fourth year at the moment and they're in my course, Chemical Pharmaceutical Science, and they actually didn't do chemistry for the Leaving Cert, but they've made it this far. They're the last 6 weeks of fourth year, so it is doable. There's plenty of resources there. The Maths Learning Centre, the library, and all the lecturers and that are very approachable. They're always there to answer questions if anyone needs a hand.
Fantastic. That's very reassuring for people, you know, for someone listening who's going, oh, I'd really love to do chemistry, but I don't do it. You know, as I said, Andrew has a friend, fourth year, 6 weeks to go. I don't think he's going to fall before the finish line at this stage. I think we can safely say that he's going to make it through, which is fantastic. Panelists, I don't know if you guys have anything to add before we finish up. And there's no more questions coming through. I think you've done a fantastic job of answering the questions in advance of them, which is amazing. But please do let us know if you have any questions. And just before we finish up.
Was I just add, actually, Sinead, that as it was said earlier, there's a great mix of college life and activities and you know, hobbies like that. And again, from the academic perspective, we try and ensure to support that by a lot of our lectures will be online, quizzes that will suit this modern generation now. It's very much an online, pulling out the laptop, the iPad, you can answer our quiz. You get 2 or 3 days. For example, we have the students coming into labs tomorrow, virtual labs, and they've had the last 2 or 3 days just to look online at 8 or 10 online questions in preparation. And they, when it suits them, you know, there's that great liberty of college. And likewise, then if there's a reason to miss a lab or change a lab because of some sports event or whatever, we do our best to work around it. So we try and make the student experience as really as enjoyable as possible.
Yeah, that's great to hear. You know, it doesn't just coexist, it's actually encouraged, you know, and you can make allowances for people and to help juggle with their commitments, which is really, as I said, it's encouraging for students who do want to join DCU. And a question that probably actually relates to that's just come in at the last minute. Someone asked, what societies should you join for chemistry? Now, I don't necessarily think you would have to, but for someone interested in chemistry, would you guys know the clubs and societies out there that someone could join, maybe to kind of continue that interest on?
Well, as I said previously, I was in the Science Society, and while it was for all the different science courses, I found it very good. A couple of people from my course were in it, and a few from the likes of genetic cell biology, and it was just a good diverse range of students. And you know, you might help each other if anyone's having any bother with any other subjects. You'd help each other with some of the modules, while also doing other stuff, like we went on trips abroad to the likes of Budapest, Prague, and went to science museums over there. So that would definitely be one I'd bookmark.
Absolutely. And just to mention, kind of on the flip, like you can be doing a chemistry course in DCU and you can absolutely join the juggling society if that's where your heart lies. You know, you like it doesn't have to correlate with the course that you're doing, which is the fantastic thing about university. You know, we had someone on a couple of weeks ago, I think, who was studying maths or physics and was joining, you know, archery, something she had never done before, but just found an interest there in university. So we have over 140 clubs and societies in DCU. There's definitely something for everyone upon entry, but I don't see any more questions coming in, and I've already kept you guys for 45 minutes, which is a fantastic length for this webinar to go on. But guys, if you do have a last minute question, you can throw it in, but if not, the email that was sent to you today from studenthelp@dcu.ie, if you do have any questions over the coming days, weeks, months, and you want to get in touch with us, please email us at studenthelp@dcu.ie and we'd be more than happy to help. And if you did want to ask a panelist a specific question and you think, oh, maybe I didn't get a chance to do it live, again, we can put you in contact with these panelists. You know, if you have a question in relation to anything, someone might be watching this, you know, back on record. So thank you very much for coming along today for our chemistry episode. Please get in touch if you have any more questions. We're running these webinars for the next couple of weeks. Next week we have a biology one, so for maybe that person who asked about biology, you could come along next week and maybe explore your options there. But thank you so much. A sincere thank you to our panelists for taking the time out of their evening to take part in this. I think it was very worthwhile, and lots of questions answered for our students and a lot of insight gained. So thank you very much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your evening and we'll see you all soon. Thank you very much. See you later.
Bye.
Bye now.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.